Welcome, everyone, to episode 31 of the Missing Pieces podcast. If this is your first time watching or listening, as this is available everywhere that podcasts are available, this is where I sit down and I discuss my life and Lego and anything else that was on my mind from the last week. And that may be the last time that you guys hear that intro. I've been contemplating now for a few weeks whether I should dump that or not. It's one of those things that I start this episode off and it just makes me very nervous about getting started because I have this certain thing that I need to say. And this is actually the first time that I've scripted it because I'll sit here, literally the last episode, I probably sat here 15 minutes trying to get that intro right. And I know it doesn't seem very difficult, but I'll be very honest with you and I'll say that making videos and being on camera is not my strong suit, which is why a podcast is perfect for me. But for some reason, I find myself recording it and making it into a video anyway. But I know a lot of my audience is on YouTube, and I know that intro has a very particular purpose and it serves it well. It's to let you know what this is. It doesn't say who I am, though. I should say, welcome to Missing Pieces. My name is Greg, and this is where I sit down and I discuss my life, Lego, and anything else that's on my mind this week. That would probably serve its purpose, but I also want to let people know that it's available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify too, because you can listen to it there. I need to figure something out. I could have like a pre-recorded thing, but I like it better when it's like live every single week. And I don't know. I just kind of like getting past that part so I can get into what I really want to get into, which is what we're going to do now. Enough talk about intros. I have 7 days to figure this out. Let me know what you guys think about the intro. You guys that have been around for a long time probably get tired of hearing it just as much as I do, but there are new people. The struggle is real. Welcome to the life of a YouTuber and podcaster. These are the things that go through our minds and our biggest worries. Hashtag first world problems. Let's go into our thank yous for the week. We always have to thank our patrons that join us. And this week, oh my goodness, 2 weeks in a row, patrons have been coming through. I want to thank and give a shout out to Blake, who I forgot to mention last week. Blake, I'm so sorry I forgot to mention you in last week's shout outs, but thank you for becoming a patron. I also want to thank Daniel. I want to thank Jacob. I want to thank Sean. And I want to thank Gemma. Thank you guys so much for coming over to Patreon, supporting us there. It is such a massive help, this whole Patreon thing, especially with the whole Made for Kids thing on YouTube and the ad rates these days with the economy pretty much collapsing. It's a massive, massive help. And I've never been one to shy away from numbers. So I'm going to be very honest with you. I make about half as much on Patreon right now with 85 patrons as I do on my entire brickitect channel, which I've been making daily videos on for the last 3 years. It's kind of remarkable. And it's even more remarkable, like the journey on Patreon, where just a few months ago, I was sitting here debating whether I even had enough value to offer someone, why someone would want to join. And here I am finding myself, like almost every day I get an email that says, hey, so-and-so signed up, like Sean signed up, Jacob signed up. And I get that email and it's just like, it's the encouragement that I need to know that this thing is something that I can do going forward. And I definitely see Patreon becoming a bigger part of what I do. And I don't know, I just love it. I love Patreon. I love making videos for a very specific set of people that, how do I say this in a way that's not going to offend anyone? People that aren't going to insult me or say something bad or, whatever. You know what YouTube comments are like. You've been there. You're probably looking at them right now. Although I would say Missing Pieces has a pretty good mix of people on here versus the random videos that you make that kind of start doing well. And then you get all the random people that come in and they're like, oh, you're an idiot. You don't know anything about Lego. Like it's nice putting stuff out to people that have your back, I should say. And to see the people that have been joining us weekly and then the monthly, and then to do the patron live streams, which we've been doing, I've been having so much fun with. Like, I love Missing Pieces. This is always going to be my number one thing that I love doing on YouTube. But those Friday night live streams where I'm streaming with just the people from Patreon, dude, I love it. I love it so much. Like, it's fantastic. It's exactly what I need in my life, and I want to thank you guys all for coming over there. I just spilled a bunch of water on my mouse, which is probably not a good thing, but let's move on to the next part of this episode, which is a follow-up on last week's episode. Last week's episode was titled My Biggest Struggle, and speaking of a good mix of people in the comments, I want to thank you guys all so much for all of the encouragement that you've given me. I've looked through all the comments. There was so much positivity in there, and I truly appreciate that, but there was nothing more powerful than this email that I got from a gentleman that's a little bit older than me. I'm not going to divulge too much information because I don't know how much he wants to be put out there. But he sent me a very helpful email discussing the same thing that I was talking about last week, which was my struggle with finding balance in my life. Finding a way to not let my hobby and my business, which happen to be one and the same, consume every aspect of my life and destroy the things that are truly important, which is my family. And this gentleman, through his email, explained how he essentially went down that path, the same path that I seemed to be going down there. And it almost destroyed his marriage and everything that he was working up towards. And it was on the cusp. But then he realized he needs to make some changes in the same way that I did as well. And they were able to work things out, and they're happy today and better off than they've ever been before. So I thought that was really awesome. And it kind of takes me to the type of advice that I think is most valuable. And maybe you can agree or disagree with this, but I find advice from people that have made mistakes and trying to tell you how and why they made that mistake and help you try to avoid it. I think that's the most helpful advice. And that's some of the advice that I like to give here on Missing Pieces. If I ever do give you advice, it's like, well, here's what I'm doing. Here's why it's not working, and here's what I'm trying to do to fix that. And as you see the ongoing progression, maybe you can decide if that's something you want to do or not. Or maybe ultimately the idea is that you would avoid making the mistakes that I've made. And I've given you guys advice about finances. I've given you advice about education. I've given you advice about how to spend your time, all things that I've struggled with. And not to say that I'm a master of any of these things, but I can tell you my experience. And I think experience, like, again, is probably the most valuable thing that someone can share with you. That's why you always seek the wisdom of older people. And even though I'm only 35, I do feel old, but there's people out there that have been through a lot more than me, and I appreciate any advice that you can give me to save me the trouble maybe that you've been through. The big thing, though, is when you get advice, and it's good advice like that, make sure you take it. So I'm going to do just that, and I want to thank you. You know who you are. I've replied back to your email. Thank you so much for sending that over to me, and it really gave me some really good perspective. And speaking of that, speaking of cutting back, speaking of finding balance in your life, another week of just doing just that. We did some serious Netflix binging this week, which I loved, and you guys gave me a lot of recommendations for things to watch, and I want to share something with you that I'm watching with Clark, man. And you're probably going to laugh at me. You're going to scoff at this, but I'm really, really enjoying it. And the show that I'm watching, it's called G.I. Joe, the animated series from 1985, basically right when I was born. I missed out on the G.I. Joe craze. Like, I had the 3 3/4 inch G.I. Joes, but the show had kind of run its course by the time I came around, and it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was my jam, like in 1989, 1990, when I was 4 or 5 years old and kind of growing up, and then Power Rangers and so forth. But G.I. Joe is one of those things. I love the action figures, and now I found out that Discovery Family Channel, I believe, is airing G.I. Joe episodes every weekday morning at like 6 o'clock in the morning. So I have those DVR'd. DVR'd, is that even a word? And I've been doing this for a while. We haven't been watching them, and they've been piling up in our DVR. And Mrs. Brickitect saw our DVR was like 97%. She's like, you got to get rid of those G.I. Joe episodes if you're not going to watch them. I'm like, I'm going to watch them. So Clark and I started watching this series, and I love it. I love the show. It's a show that both of us can enjoy. Like, he watches some things that I just can't, like, I can't sit through. There's a lot of things. It's not bad stuff, but like Nick Jr., Disney Jr., that kind of stuff, I'm just like, but G.I. Joe, it's such an awesome series. I love it because each episode is fairly short. I would say with commercial breaks and all this stuff, it's probably like 15 minutes maybe of each episode. And each one tells a story that's unrelated to other stories in most cases. So you can just sit down for that time period, enjoy the episode, the storyline, and then you can watch another one, and that's what we've been doing. So we've binging through those as well. And I just been really enjoying it. It's actually a Marvel Entertainment product, or Marvel Productions, and the animation isn't fantastic, and the voice acting and all that stuff is super cheesy, but there's this charm about it. And the fact that me, as a 35-year-old dude, and my son, who's 5 years old, can sit down together and enjoy something like that together is really cool. And it's got me the idea that I should go into storage room B, which is back here. I call it that because it's a Office Space reference. I don't actually have 2 storage rooms, but I have all my G.I. Joes in a tin in there, and I thought it'd be cool to pull those out and enjoy those with Clark, man. I will say the G.I. Joes that I have, though, I haven't seen any of them on the series yet. All the ones I have are like from like the early 90s, and I think at that point the show was kind of done for, so they were kind of just making guys up. But man, I loved G.I. Joes as a kid, and I'd love to share that with Clark as well. So that could be a really fun thing for us to do, and we're having fun with the series every day. I think like 2 new ones get recorded, so we're watching at least 2. We're watching the backlog, and eventually we'll probably end up seeing every single episode of that show. And I love it. I love just sitting down and doing it and binging Netflix and all this stuff. The other thing that I watched this week, you guys are going to be so proud of me, especially you Star Wars detectors, if you happen to actually have stuck around to this point. I finished Mandalorian, a little show that came out like back in the fall of last year, and I waited like 4 weeks and I watched the first 4 episodes. And I watched them all in one sitting. It was epic. And then somehow I got away from it. Episode 5 came out, 6. It was one of those things where every week they were releasing a new episode. And I got away from it somehow. And I knew that I need to get back into it. Now in my time of cutting back, at least on YouTube. Like I'm obviously not cutting back on entertainment because I'm binging this stuff. And there is some sense of guilt in doing this. But I finished Mandalorian. Episode 5, I will say, was probably my least favorite of the bunch. So that wasn't the best way to come back in. But then 6, 7, and 8 were really good, with 8, I think, being the best one, and that was the finale. And I'm just left wondering what's going to happen next. I'm so excited for season 2 whenever that comes out. That's the only downside of this, is like I have to wait for the next season, and that sucks. That's why I like to find shows that have been out for years and years and years. And you guys have given me some good recommendations, like Breaking Bad. We watched that entire series. Stranger Things, we've watched that entire series. I just love, you guys know that feeling when you're watching a Netflix show or whatever, or Disney Plus in this case, and you know that there's like all these episodes sitting there, and you watch one and you're like, one more. We always say one more. And then you watch that next one, you're like, one more. There was this episode of Portlandia. I don't know if you guys know that show, but it's a comedy that I think it might have been on Comedy Central. And they did this skit about Battlestar Galactica where they were binging and doing that. And all this stuff started happening, like their electricity was getting shut off, and they just kept doing like one more episode. And then they ran out. So then they ended up going and kidnapping the writer of Battlestar Galactica and making him write another episode. And it was just so relatable because we've all been there, right? Like you're on that cliffhanger. And in most cases, like if you're watching this on television, you would have to wait another week to watch the next one. Like we do that with Survivor. That's our show that we watch together, other than Lego Masters. God rest its soul, at least for now. But to have the ability just to click that button, and not only to like click that button, but to skip the intro and skip all commercials, it's wild. So now maybe I need to find balance in watching online content, but to watching Netflix and Disney Plus and even my DVR. I need to find balance there. But I've been enjoying it. I feel a little bit guilty, like I should be doing something more productive. And that's just a silly way of thinking. I've thought that way about a lot of things, like video games, for example. I've always thought, why should I play video games? I could be making a video. I could be doing something that works towards this business that I have here or whatever. But it's like sometimes you just need some downtime. Like this week, I took a day off. Believe it or not, I took a day off of YouTube. I didn't put any content out on brickitect on Monday. And you know what? No one probably noticed. There wasn't any emails or messages or anything that I got that said, Greg, where's today's video? Where are you? No. People move on with their lives. It's not important. The thing that I have in my head that I owe people this thing, it's just in my head. I mean, I will say that there are people out there that probably really do enjoy seeing that episode when it comes out each day. And there's people that may be having a bad day that day. And this is the people that I think about, and this is what gets me in trouble. I think about that person that's having a bad day that day, and they're like, they watch that brickitect video, and that's the thing that they needed to kind of like get them out of that slump. It's just a couple minutes of escape from whatever it is that they may be going through. And that is what encourages me to keep going. But what do they say on airplanes? You got to save yourself before you save other people, right? And if I'm working for those people without thinking about how it's affecting me or my family life or my time or how I'm spending these massive chunks of time that I don't even realize I'm spending because I'm so engaged in it, you got to think about that a little bit. And that's what I'm learning. So I've really taken my biggest struggle to heart, and the last 2 weeks have been a lot better than the previous 4 weeks where I had this massive relapse into streaming every day, spending hours doing that, gaming all the time. Like everything needs to find balance. And we're getting there. I'm going to keep sharing that struggle with you each week. I'll maybe not quite this in depth, but I think it's worth keeping top of mind because the things that we track are managed and the things that we manage are tracked and vice versa. It's just good to keep things in mind because when you start not thinking about the things that may be problems for yourself, that's when you start going crazy. Like let's use losing weight, for example. you get on that scale every day, you're holding yourself accountable. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is accountability. You get on that scale every day, you're holding yourself accountable. You see that scale go up, it means you did something wrong yesterday. You see that scale go down, it means you're doing something right. You get on there every day and you keep tracking that, and you see that bar or the graph start going down, success. If you don't do that and you're just like, yeah, I think I'm doing the right thing, I'm not going to worry too much about it. Then you get on the scale a week later and realize that you're up 10 pounds. Something wasn't right there, and you didn't catch it in time before it was too late. So that's what I'm trying to do here. And I know there's other people that are struggling with this too. I got a couple messages and comments there, not only from that email that I got, but there was a couple people that mentioned too that they have similar struggles with maybe letting their hobby take advantage of them as opposed to their hobby serving them. And yeah, I think this could be powerful for people. And maybe for people that don't even realize it too. Maybe you don't even realize how much you've let your addiction to, and we'll just call it what it is, an addiction to whatever it is that you're into. You haven't realized how much you've let that control you. And it doesn't have to be YouTube. It can be anything. You could be addicted to, and it doesn't have to be drugs. It doesn't have to be alcohol. You can be addicted to TikTok. I may know some people. That was me trying to wink. If you're listening to the podcast, you're missing out on some golden content here. You may be addicted to Instagram. You might be addicted to smartphones are a path to addiction. God, I sound like some type of old preacher man or something. These smartphones are the devil. Don't let the devil come out after you. No. Do what makes you happy, but do it in moderation. Please drink responsibly, we'll say. So that was kind of my week of cutting back, watching a lot of content, just enjoying myself, feeling a little guilty about that. We've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, like I mentioned earlier with Patreon. Clark actually worked on a secret build that you guys don't know about, and we've been having a good time with that. We did a huge Patreon live stream with it, with the finale of it. It was really cool. You will find out about it next week. It's going to be in May. Some of you guys may already know what I'm talking about. But we did that, and I've just been really enjoying what I've been doing. I've actually been thinking, as I talk about balance here, I've been actually thinking about doing a little more content on Greg's World, maybe cutting back even more a little bit here, but on Greg's World, I have a vlog channel called Greg's World. Many of you know that. And I've been tossing around this idea because I don't have any comments there because of things that happened well over a year ago with kids' channels, and they took comments away because YouTube's trying to be protective, and I understand that. It's their house, their rules. Even though my channel, I haven't done anything wrong. It's just like, I don't want to get into it too much, but as much as we have like a community here, and I love the brickitect community, there's also a community there that I never get a chance to talk to. I don't do a mail time on that channel. I don't have a way to interact with these people. So I was thinking about doing like a weekly live stream there where me and Clark or whatever just kind of sit down, very informal, and just like shoot the breeze with the people that are on there. Find out what they're liking, what they're not liking, where we're at on things. All the things that I get from you guys naturally, I'd like to try to find a way to do there. I'm also trying to do more like posts there, which would just be like photos. Those guys really love seeing like photos of Clark and stuff. Mainly Greg's World I should just call it Clark's World because it's like an update of Clark's life and what he's got going on. Roxy has a lot of fans there as well. I guess the same thing is here on Brickitect. I'm just the cameraman, as I've been told. Just the cameraman. Clark's the builder boy. I'm the cameraman. But I do love that. I love doing that so much. I want to talk about, speaking of series that I'd like to start, or ones that I'm bringing back. I'm trying to segue into the one big topic that I want to discuss here. This is a gem from a good friend of mine. I started working on the return of Breaking It Down. If you guys don't know what Breaking It Down is, you probably don't. If you just subscribed in the last 5 months or so, which is probably like 30,000 of you, maybe more. Breaking It Down is the series where I take the sets that you guys see us build all the time, I tear them apart, I put them away. I don't keep things on display that much. I just put them in storage, almost like a library of Lego sets where you can pull a set off the shelf, pull the Ziploc bag that has all the pieces in the manual out, and build it as though it's like a natural set. The only difference is the tape is cut from the left side, of course. Stay tuned to find out more about that. 100K, baby. I decided to bring this series back because I haven't torn anything apart in the 5 months that we've lived here, or 4 months that we've lived here, and I've just been having all these sets on the floor. In fact, if I move this way, nope. Oh, you get a little taste right, oh my God, right there. You can start to see some of the sets. I've torn apart 10 of them now. I did, well, let me explain more about this. So breaking it down, tearing apart my Lego sets. But the cool thing about it is, not only am I tearing apart my Lego sets, I'm doing I'm failing at explaining this. I did it so much better before. I tear apart my Lego sets. I decided that I'm going to live stream myself tearing those apart where I can interact with the community while I'm doing that. It keeps me occupied, keeps my mind active, and it's just a fun engagement thing. It doesn't require too much brain activity to tear apart a set, so I can literally just focus on the chat and talk to people while I'm doing it. And we had a great time doing that this week. So I recorded that. Not only does it stream, but it also records to my computer in the same way that we are watching right now does. And I decided what I do with that footage is I take what could be an hour-long piece of footage, right? Like me tearing that apart. And I do a time lapse of it where I just condense it down to like 10 minutes. So it's like, you're like blasting through these things. And what I do historically is with that footage is I answer your guys' questions. So being this case, I haven't done a breaking it down in 5 months. I felt like the questions were probably fairly stale. So I asked us for new questions, anything you guys want to know. And I ended up getting a bunch of new questions and making that video, and it's out this week. I'll try to link it up above, even though I'll probably never remember to do that, being that we're like 20 minutes into this at this point. It was a good time. I really thought the questions were great. There were some good ones to answer there, but there was one question that I got that I was like, this isn't a breaking it down question. This is a missing pieces question, because this is like next level discussion. This isn't like, hey, Greg, what do you think of The Mandalorian? I'm like, yeah, it's a good show, or I guess you could go in on that. I don't have those capabilities. I always admire people that can watch like a 40-minute show and talk about it for 30 minutes. I don't have that kind of talent. But most of the questions are fairly simple, 1, 2, 3 sentences, maybe takes 30 seconds to answer. This one from my favorite Lego YouTuber, Mr. Brickitecter. I love this guy. He has a question that just like lit my world up here. And he says, when I take a vacation, I don't think about work. YouTube is different. This is on the topic of maybe finding balance. When I take a vacation, I don't think about work. YouTube is different. The only time I completely get away is when I don't have internet access. Do you think you could go on an entire week without logging into YouTube? You could still schedule videos, but go 1 week without filming, editing, responding to comments, watching videos, etc. Is that possible? Ooh, that's a good question, Mr. Brickitecter. Not something that I've really contemplated too much, where I just left for a week. I said in the past when I was talking about finding balance that even before, when we would go on vacation, I would take my laptop with me. I'd have videos like already recorded but not edited, and I would edit those and schedule those like in the mornings when we're like kind of just waking up and stuff, and actually working while I'm on vacation. Even though I don't consider what I do work, most people probably would consider it that. It's a hobby for me that earns money. Somehow a hobby that earns money is a business and a job. I don't know. I guess it's a good place to be in. And that's where I wanted to kind of talk about this. I've contemplated before the idea of walking away from YouTube, like quitting entirely, not just for a week, but forever. And I thought how nice it would be, because I said it when this episode started that this isn't me in my natural state. I'm not an entertainer. I'm not a person that's good on camera. I'm not a good communicator. I'm a much better writer than I am anything else. If anything, I should just have a blog where I take photos and have a blog. I don't find that wildly interesting, though. YouTube has been one of those things for me that I just love it so much that I've willed myself into doing it. It's like if you have no talent in basketball, but somehow you get good enough to play at the YMCA with a bunch of other people. That's sort of what YouTube has become for me. And maybe even more so than that, Maybe I got good enough that I made it on to like the high school team, and maybe got a little bit of a scholarship in college, right? And it wasn't through any talent. It was just willpower. It was like, I want to do this. I'm going to keep working at this until I'm good at it. And it may have taken me 8 years to get to the point where I'm at right now, but I'm happy with where I'm at right now. And I've somehow done it. But there's times when I'm thinking like, how nice would it be to not have to put yourself out there? How nice would it be to not have to entertain people, to not worry about reading a comment that may hurt your feelings, to not have to worry about any of these things? But then right after that, I think about what a gift I've been given, what a blessing I have here, where I literally get to do the thing that I love to do for a living, which is video making and sharing my life and like just being authentic and sharing who I am, and to somehow have people that are interested in that and being a part of that it's an incredible gift. And it seems like such a waste to walk away from that, right? Like it's the same thing I think about. This is good. Let's go back to basketball. I think about Michael Jordan, and I think about how in the 1997-98 season. He won his 6th championship. Just balling out of control, like the best, greatest player ever, right? And then he retires. He just retired, just let it go. And I think about that wasted talent. I mean, he did make a comeback in the early 2000s playing for the Washington Wizards and was still pretty good. I watched a video on how like they compared his stats to other people's stats, especially at 40 years old, and was absolutely off the charts. I think about those maybe 4 or 5 years that he could have continued playing and been a dominant force. And I'm just like, what a waste. And I think about people like Aaron Hernandez, who also has a Netflix special. He was a guy that played for the Patriots, had all this massive talent, but decided that he wanted to be a serial killer instead. And I'm just like, why would you waste what you've been given? And I guess in the sports world, that's how I'm trying to explain what I have here on YouTube. I feel like this is a massive gift that I've been given, and through luck and willpower and the YouTube gods and planets aligning somehow, I've been able to do this, and I don't ever want to give this back. So when you ask, could I go an entire week without logging in YouTube? I think I could, but I would be thinking about it. He says, is it possible to do that? Yes, that's possible for me, especially if you're saying I could schedule videos, because I would just bust it for like the week before or a couple weeks before if this was like planned, where it was like, okay, so May 1st to May 7th, you can't go on YouTube. I would have videos ready every day. But a better question for me at least is, could you go that week without thinking about it? I don't know. He talks about the only time I completely get away is when I don't have internet access. But are you still thinking about it? Are you still thinking about YouTube? Are you thinking about that video? Are you thinking about comments? Do you want to go into YouTube Studio and see what the views are on your latest video? See if people are watching it, the comments. Does that make you feel good when you see the comments saying that they love your video? It certainly does for me. When I see, I love your video, that was great, this was awesome, Clark's hilarious, and then I see, you suck, you should die, and I'm like, well, that just ruined my day. I'm trying not to let that happen, but yeah, I think I could go a week, to answer your question, I could go a week without putting a YouTube video out or logging into YouTube. I don't think I could go a week without thinking about YouTube. I don't think I could go a day without thinking about YouTube. I'm always thinking about the next thing. What am I doing today? Like, that's the first thing I think about when I wake up in some cases. It's like, what's my plan for today? What video am I making today? Because I don't typically have a schedule for the most part like some people do. My days consist of, I walk in the studio, I'm like, what are we going to build today? What are we going to do today? Like, every day is a new day for me. And I love that. I don't like being constrained. Like, my biggest thing I have on my schedule, I guess, is every Sunday is Missing Pieces. And I've considered recording these ahead of time. Like, I'm recording this literally hours before you're watching it. But I feel like you lose a little bit of that authenticity in the moment, right? Like, when you watch this, assuming that you watch it right when it comes out, this is me in that moment. It's as close to being alive as possible. And I've considered doing these live because, strangely enough, I'm actually less nervous when I do a live stream than when I do one like this, because when I do this, where I'm doing it and I'm thinking about what I'm saying and stuff, right now I'm thinking about how easy it would be just to click the stop button and start this all over again. And that's why I struggle with the intro so much, because we're so early into it that I could do the intro 15 times if I need to. If you're doing it live, like, you click that button, there is no going back. And I feel like more comfort in that, knowing that I can't do it, than knowing that I have the capacity or the ability to start over again. And it's wild to think that. Like, how could you be more comfortable live than when you're not? But that perfectionism comes out, and I'm like, yeah, I should cut that part out. I went over the line there, which I don't think that very often, because it's like, I may cross the line in a lot of ways, but I cross it because that's where I'm at. And if that's an issue with people, I understand. That's fine. It's who I am. And maybe I say something that you don't like. Maybe I say something you don't agree with, but I can respect that. I can respect you doing the same thing. We might have differing opinions on something, but it doesn't mean that we both don't have opinions and that we can't value each other for our opinions, even if we're completely opposite on those. But yeah, I struggle with doing recorded content. It's just so tempting to want to do multiple takes. That's why I like recording with Clark, because there is no multiple takes when it's Clark, man. Like, if he's doing something, I can't be like, hey, Clark, that hilarious thing you just did, do it again. You can't. So I like that. And I don't know how I got into all that from asking if I could log into YouTube, or not log into YouTube for a week, but I knew that would be something that would be interesting to talk about. And I did want to talk about how I've had thoughts about leaving and how I just don't think that I could do it. I can never walk away from this. I'll leave YouTube. Well, I'll probably leave YouTube for Patreon one of these days, just because of the financial necessity, at least with the made for kids stuff. I almost, and I don't want to jump the gun on this, but I almost see like maybe 2 years from now, assuming Patreon continues the way that it does, I almost see YouTube almost being like my highlight channel for brickitect. It's like, here's the highlights of what you missed this week, because it's so hard to, like, I mean, it's not hard, but it sucks to be hostage to algorithms and advertisers and federal guidelines on what you can and can't do and how you need to classify things. I like Patreon because I can just do what I want to do. I don't have to worry about that. It gives me structure and stability. And this is a moment where I would like to cut this part out, because I feel like this is maybe the third time I've talked about Patreon in this episode, and I really start worrying about what people are going to think. They're going to be like, Greg, all you do is pimp out your Patreon. Greg, you're such a money grubber. Greg, it's like I hear all these voices, and I don't feel like that in my mind. I'm just explaining my thought process and where I'm at, and I think there's a lot of people out there understand, but for some people, when you start talking about the financial end of things, especially on the internet where everything is expected for free, people get very upset about it. And that's where I've always been fearful of it, but I can't be fearful anymore. My job is to sell myself, to put out content, and try to do the best that I can in every aspect of my life. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And that's what I encourage you to do as well. Do the best that you can with what you got. There's nothing more you can do. And look back on your progress. Get on that scale every day. See what you did right and what you did wrong yesterday, and try to do a little bit better the next day. And if you're feeling really fishy, feeling froggy, let's just cut that part out. You can get yourself a webcam, get yourself on YouTube, and tell everyone how you're making out with that. And maybe some people will gain some perspective of it and maybe learn from you. And that's where we're at here, guys. So I want to thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you found some type of value in this today. Hope you found it enjoyable listening to me talk about whatever's been on my mind this week. If you want to support this podcast, there's a couple things you can do. I won't mention the one thing because we've already talked about it too far. You can leave a comment on here. I'm always up for finding new things to talk about. My life is only so interesting. I can only talk about watching G.I. Joe so many times. I can't do it again. So if there's a topic that you would love to discuss next week, whether it's Lego or non-Lego, I know these episodes have gotten way off of Lego, and that's been on my mind as well, where I'm thinking like, man, Greg, this is supposed to be a Lego podcast. Maybe you should talk about Lego a little bit. I'm happy just with what it is, but if you guys have any Lego topics you'd like me to discuss outside of like, what do you think of this new set, that new set? What's your favorite set? If you actually want me to dive deep into the Lego hobby or whatever, throw that out there. If you'd like to hear me just talk about any random topic, or maybe even something that you're struggling with that you think maybe I can help you with. I had a request actually, now that we're on this topic, and this is supposed to be the outro. I had someone request that I do a whole video about finances and my thoughts on debt and how to get out of debt and all that. I could do it. I don't know if anyone would find it interesting, but I can share my journey with you and the things that I've learned and the things I would recommend. I've done it in small chunks before, but never an entire video. But I'm open to talk about anything. If I have any experience in it, I'll talk to you about it. If you would find it enjoyable, leave it as a comment below. I always scour those before I record these episodes. So I'd love to hear from you. Also, love to hear from you on Apple Podcasts if you're on there. We're up to like 106 reviews on there, which is really epic. And I always read the reviews and the ratings and all that. And I think it helps. We've actually slid down to the number 4 slot in Missing Pieces again somehow. We're sitting up there at the top at number 2. There's 4 Missing Pieces episodes, and I'm always like looking at those other ones. I'm like, how do I get into that number 1 spot there? And the only way that I can think to do it is if people actually go over there and listen. If you want to do that, I'll put a link down below. Actually, you could probably just go to Apple Podcasts. It's going to be the easiest way to do it. And just search for Missing Pieces. I'm number 4 right now, unfortunately. But on that, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching and listening to today's episode. It really does mean a lot to me that you guys are here for me to be my therapist while I sit here and spill my heart out to you guys. Favorite thing that I do every week. I love it. I love it. Let me know what you guys think about all this. Let me know what you think about the intro, too. Maybe we'll do something different next week. And on that, we'll find you in the next Missing Pieces episode. Ended it 1 second too late.